The first time Ethan Caldwell's fist collided with my face, I tasted blood and saw stars. It was freshman year at NYU, and I was just a scrawny kid from Oregon trying to find my place in the chaos of New York City. By the third punch, I was on the ground, my vision blurring, wondering why this golden-haired god of a man hated me so much. I was Robert Nguyen, 18, awkward, and openly gay in a way that made me a target. Growing up in a small town, I'd learned to brace for cruelty. But Ethan was different. His venom felt personal, like I'd offended him just by existing. He was the star of the lacrosse team, a junior with a smile that could charm professors and a glare that could shatter glass. In the crowded halls of the dorms, his presence was a storm, and I was the lightning rod. That first semester, Ethan's torment was relentless. He mocked my voice, my clothes, my everything, always with that cruel smirk, his hazel eyes glinting with something I couldn't name. Once, in a cafeteria, he accidentally spilled his coffee on my sketchbook, ruining months of drawings. Another time, he shoved me into a locker, his breath hot against my ear as he whispered, "You don't belong here." Fairy. Each encounter left me bruised, inside and out, but I never fought back. I couldn't. He was untouchable, and I was invisible. But there was something else, something I didn't admit even to myself. Late at night, when the dorm was quiet, I'd lie awake, replaying his taunts, his voice, the way his broad shoulders filled a room. It wasn't just fear. It was fascination. Ethan was a paradox, beautiful and brutal, a puzzle I couldn't solve. I hated him, but I couldn't stop watching him. By spring, I'd learned to avoid him, ducking into stairwells or skipping parties where he'd be. But NYU's campus was small, and fate was cruel. One rainy April evening, I was in the library, buried in a history paper, when Ethan appeared, his lacrosse bag slung over his shoulder. He dropped into the chair across from me, uninvited, his damp hair curling against his forehead. "You're always hiding." "When?" he said, his voice low, almost curious. I froze, expecting a jab, but he just stared, his eyes searching mine like he was seeing me for the first time. "Why you hate me?" I blurted, my voice shaking. It was the first time I'd spoken back. His jaw tightened, and for a moment, I thought he'd hit me again. Instead, he leaned closer, his voice barely a whisper. "You think I hate you," he said, then stood and left without another word. I sat there, heart pounding, wondering what the hell had just happened. That moment shifted something. Ethan's taunts didn't stop, but they changed less vicious, more like a challenge. He'd catch my eye in the halls, holding my gaze a second too long. Once, during a group project, his hand brushed mine, and he didn't pull away. I told myself it was nothing, that I was imagining things. But the air between us crackled, charged with something neither of us could name. By sophomore year, I'd grown into myself a bit taller, less awkward, with a group of friends who made NYU feel like home. I was still wary of Ethan, but I wasn't a scared kid anymore. One night, at a campus art show, I displayed a painting, a stormy abstract of blues and reds, inspired by the chaos of my first year. I didn't expect anyone to notice, least of all him. But there he was, standing in front of it, his expression unreadable. "You painted this?" he asked, not looking at me. I nodded, bracing for mockery. Instead, he said, "It's intense." Like you, my breath caught. Was that a compliment? Before I could respond, he walked away, leaving me staring at his retreating figure, my heart a tangled mess. That spring, I started noticing cracks in Ethan's armor. He'd linger after classes, watching me from across the room. Once, I caught him sketching in a notebook, quick, sharp lines that mirrored my own style. I didn't know what to make of it, but I couldn't shake the feeling that Ethan was fighting something bigger than me. Something inside himself. One night, at a crowded frat party, everything changed. I was there with my friend Mia, trying to blend in, when Ethan cornered me near the backyard. His eyes were glassy, his breath tinged with whiskey. "You're always in my head." "Robert," he slurred, stepping too close. "Why can't I get you out?" Before I could process his words, he grabbed my face and kissed me, hard, desperate, like he was drowning. I froze, then pushed him away, my heart racing. "What the hell, Ethan?" I demanded. He looked at me, raw and unguarded, then turned and vanished into the crowd. I didn't sleep that night. His kiss burned through me, a mix of anger and longing I couldn't untangle. Ethan Caldwell, my bully, had kissed me. And worse, I'd wanted it. The days after Ethan's kiss were a blur of confusion and avoidance. I saw him everywhere, across the quad, in the cafeteria, his hazel eyes catching mine before darting away. Each glance felt like a hook sinking deeper into my chest. I wanted to confront him, to demand answers, but fear held me back. What if it was a drunken mistake? What if it wasn't? My friends noticed my distraction. Mia, sharp as ever, cornered me in our dorm's common room. "Spill it, Rob," she said, her dark eyes narrowing. "You've been a ghost all week." I hesitated, then told her everything: the bullying, the kiss, the way Ethan's touch lingered in my dreams. She whistled low. "That's messed up. But you know he's got a reputation, right? Golden boy with a dark side. Be careful." Her words echoed as I navigated campus, torn between wanting to see Ethan and dreading it. I threw myself into my art, painting feverishly, each stroke a release of the storm inside me. My latest piece, a chaotic swirl of gold and crimson, felt like a portrait of him, of us. I didn't know what us even meant. A week later, fate intervened. I was at a local coffee shop, sketching in a corner, when Ethan walked in. He froze when he saw me, his lacrosse jacket slung over one shoulder, his hair still damp from practice. For a moment, I thought he'd leave, but he walked over, his steps deliberate. "Can I sit?" he asked, his voice low. I nodded, my throat tight. He didn't mention the kiss. Instead, he talked about art, my art. "I saw your painting at the show," he said, his fingers tracing the edge of my sketchbook. "It's like you see things no one else does." I stared at him, stunned. This was Ethan Caldwell, the guy who'd made my life hell, talking like he actually saw me. "Why are you being nice?" I asked, my voice sharp. He flinched, then looked away. "I'm trying to figure that out myself," he muttered. Our conversation was halting, awkward, but it was the first time we'd talked without cruelty. He asked about my paintings, my classes, even my hometown. I answered cautiously, waiting for the punchline, but it never came. When he left, He lingered at the door, his eyes meeting mine. "See you around, Robert," he said, and it felt like a promise. After that, Ethan was everywhere, not as a bully, but as something else. He'd show up at the library, sit silently across from me, or accidentally bump into me at campus events. Each encounter chipped away at my defenses, but I couldn't forget the past. The bruises had faded, but the memories hadn't. One night, during a campus film screening, he found me in the back row. The room was dark, the movie's dialogue a soft hum. He leaned close, his shoulder brushing mine. "I'm sorry," he whispered, so quiet I almost missed it. "For everything." My heart stopped. I turned to him, his face half lit by the screen's glow, and saw something raw in his eyes, regret. Maybe, or something deeper. "Why did you do it?" I asked, my voice barely steady. He didn't answer, just looked at me like he was drowning again. The rest of sophomore year was a dance of tension and tentative trust. Ethan stopped taunting me, but he didn't stop watching me. I caught him sketching again, his drawings sharp and vivid, like mine. Once, he left a sketch on my desk, a portrait of me, all sharp lines and soft shadows. It was beautiful, and it terrified me. By summer, I was back in Oregon, trying to process what Ethan had become to me. I painted obsessively, each canvas a battle between anger and longing. When fall semester started, I wasn't sure what to expect. But Ethan was waiting. On the first day of junior year, he found me outside the art building, his expression nervous but determined. "Can we start over?" he asked, holding out a coffee, my favorite order. Somehow he knew. I took it, my fingers brushing his, and felt that same spark from the night he kissed me. "Prove it," I said, my voice steady despite the chaos in my chest. He nodded, like he'd been waiting for the challenge. And just like that, Ethan Caldwell, my college bully, became something else entirely, someone I couldn't stop thinking about, someone who was starting to rewrite my story. Junior year at NYU was a turning point, a tightrope walk between caution and curiosity. Ethan was no longer the storm that upended my life. He was a puzzle, each piece revealing a man I didn't know how to trust. Yet every time he showed up with a coffee, a quiet smile, or a sketch slipped under my dorm door, I felt myself slipping closer to something dangerous. He kept his promise to prove himself. It started small. He'd text me about art exhibits, show up to my gallery openings, or ask about my latest painting with a sincerity that disarmed me. But I wasn't naive. I remembered the blood, the taunts, the way his cruelty had carved scars into my confidence. I kept my distance, testing him, waiting for the moment he'd revert to the Ethan I'd feared. One crisp October evening, we ended up at a rooftop party in Brooklyn, the city skyline glittering below. Ethan looked different, less guarded, his charcoal blazer hugging his frame, his blonde hair catching the neon glow. We stood by the edge, drinks in hand, the tension between us electric. "Why me?" I asked, the question burning in my chest. "Why did you pick me to torment?" His face tightened, and for a moment, I thought he'd dodge again. Then he spoke, his voice raw. "Because you were everything I couldn't be." He told me about his life, his strict military family, the pressure to be the perfect son, the lacrosse star, the straight man. "I saw you. So open. So free," he said, staring at the skyline. It made me hate myself. and I took it out on you. His confession hung between us, heavy and fragile. I wanted to hate him, but the pain in his eyes mirrored my own. I'm not that guy anymore. Robert, he said, turning to me. Let me show you. Against my better judgment, I let him. We started spending time together, study sessions, late-night diner runs, walks through Central Park. Ethan was different when it was just us, funny, thoughtful, with a quiet intensity that made my pulse race. He'd talk about art, his sketches, his dreams of escaping his father's expectations. I saw the boy behind the bully, and it scared me how much I wanted to know him. But the past wasn't easy to erase. One night, at a campus bar, a group of Ethan's old lacrosse teammates spotted us together. Their jeers cut through the noise. Caldwell's gone soft for the art kid, and I braced for Ethan to laugh it off, to distance himself. Instead, he grabbed my hand, his grip firm, and let me outside. I don't care what they think, he said, his breath visible in the cold air. I care about you. That was the night I kissed him. Not out of anger or confusion, but because I wanted to. It was soft, tentative, under a flickering street lamp. And when he kissed me back, it felt like the world realigned. But trust was a fragile thing. The next day, I overheard a teammate taunting Ethan in the gym, calling him names I'd once endured. Ethan didn't fight back, but his silence worried me. Was he strong enough to face this? Was I? As winter break approached, Ethan invited me to his family's cabin in the Adirondacks. Just us, he said, his eyes hopeful. I hesitated, the weight of his past actions still heavy. But I said yes. The cabin was rustic, snow-dusted, and far from the noise of the city. We cooked, talked, and laughed, the firelight casting shadows on his face. One night, as we lay on a blanket by the hearth, he traced my jaw with his thumb. I don't deserve you, he whispered. But I'm trying to. I didn't have words, so I kissed him, letting the warmth of the moment drown out my doubts. But reality crept in. His phone buzzed with a text from his father, a curt demand to stop this nonsense and focus on his future. Ethan's face darkened, and I saw the boy who'd lashed out at me years ago, trapped by expectations he couldn't escape. What happens when we go back? I asked, my voice quiet. He didn't answer, and the silence felt like a warning. Back at NYU, the weight of Ethan's silence followed us. The cabin had been a bubble, a place where we could pretend the world didn't exist, but campus was a battlefield. Whispers trailed us about Ethan's sudden change, about us. I didn't care about the gossip, but I saw it wearing on him. His jaw would clench when teammates smirked, and he'd pull away from me in public, his eyes clouded with doubt. I threw myself into my art, channeling the tension into a new series, bold, jagged paintings of storms and light. Ethan came to my studio one night, his face pale. My dad knows, he said, his voice hollow. He saw us in the city. He's not happy. I reached for him, but he stepped back. I need time. Robert, my heart sank, but I nodded. Take what you need, I said, though it felt like losing him. Days turned into weeks. Ethan was a ghost. Texts went unanswered, and he avoided our usual spots. I painted through the ache, each stroke a cry I couldn't voice. My friends rallied around me, but their support couldn't fill the hole Ethan left. I wondered if I'd been wrong to trust him, If the bully I'd feared was still there, hiding behind those hazel eyes. Then, one snowy February night, he showed up at my dorm, soaked and shivering. "I'm sorry," he said, his voice breaking. "I didn't know how to do this." He told me about his father's ultimatum: cut ties with me or lose his trust fund, his future. "I try to walk away," he said, his eyes wet. "But I can't. You're worth more than that." I wanted to believe him, but doubt lingered. "What happens when it gets hard again?" I asked. He took my hand, his grip steady. "I'll fight for this. For us." That night, we didn't kiss or make promises. We just sat together, the silence heavy but honest. As the snow fell outside, spring brought a fragile new rhythm. Ethan was trying, publicly holding my hand, introducing me to his friends as my boyfriend. Each step felt like a victory, but I saw the toll it took. His father's calls were relentless, and his teammates' taunts grew sharper. One night, at a lacrosse game, a group of them cornered me in the stands, their words venomous. "You're ruining him." "Gwen." I stood my ground, but their hatred shook me. Ethan found me after the game, his face furious. "They had no right," he said, pulling me close. "I'm done hiding." The next day, he quit the team, a decision that stunned everyone. "Lacrosse was for my dad," he told me later, his voice steady. "This is for me." I was proud, but scared. His father's shadow loomed larger than ever. We spent the summer in the city, scraping by on part-time jobs and stolen moments. Ethan started sketching again, his work raw and beautiful, and we'd spend hours in my tiny apartment, creating together. One night, as we lay on my cramped bed, he traced the scars on my knuckles, remnants of his past cruelty. "I'll spend my life making this right," he whispered. I believed him, but the world wasn't done testing us. In August, Ethan's father showed up unannounced. He was a towering man, all sharp edges and cold authority, and he didn't bother hiding his disgust. "You're throwing your life away," he told Ethan, ignoring me like I was nothing. "End this, or you're cut off." Ethan stood tall, his voice unwavering. Then cut me off. His father left without a word, and Ethan collapsed into my arms, trembling but resolute. That moment changed everything. Ethan was free, but freedom came at a cost. Without his father's support, he had to figure out who he was outside the expectations that had shaped him. And I had to learn to trust that the man who'd once broken me could now hold me together. Senior year was a crucible. Ethan and I were together, openly, defiantly, but the world didn't make it easy. Without his father's money, Ethan took on 2 jobs, barista by day, bartender by night, while juggling classes. I saw the exhaustion in his eyes, but he never complained. "You're worth it," he'd say, kissing my forehead, and I'd melt, though worry gnawed at me. My art was gaining traction, with a solo exhibit lined up at a small Soho gallery. Ethan was my biggest supporter, helping me haul canvases and hyping my work to anyone who'd listen. But the pressure was mounting. His father's rejection had left him raw, and old teammates still threw slurs when we passed. I wanted to shield him, but Ethan was stubborn, insisting he could handle it. One night, at a campus pride event, everything unraveled. We were dancing, lost in each other, when a group of guys, former teammates, started shouting slurs from the sidelines. Ethan tensed, his hand tightening in mine. Ignore them, I whispered, but one of them threw a beer can, grazing Ethan's shoulder. Before I could stop him, Ethan charged, fists flying. I pulled him back, heart pounding, as security dragged the others away. In the quiet of my dorm, I cleaned the cut on his knuckles, my hands shaking. "You can't keep doing this," I said. "You're fighting battles that don't need fighting." He looked at me, his eyes fierce. "They don't get to hurt you." Not anymore. His words hit hard, a reminder of the guilt he still carried. I kissed him, slow and steady, trying to anchor us both. The gallery opening was a bright spot. My paintings, vibrant, emotional abstracts, drew a crowd, and Ethan was there, beaming with pride. But as the night wore on, I noticed him checking his phone, his face pale. "My mom," he said later, his voice tight. "She's sick. Cancer." Dad didn't tell me. He was unraveling, caught between guilt for leaving his family and anger at his father's control. I convinced him to visit her in Connecticut. He was gone for a week, and each day without him felt like a lifetime. When he returned, he was quieter, his sketches darker. "She wants me to make things right with Dad," he said, staring at the floor. "But I can't go back to who I was." I held him, feeling the weight of his choice, knowing how much it cost him to choose me. As graduation loomed, we faced bigger questions. I got an offer to show my work in Chicago, a chance to start fresh. Ethan was accepted into a design program in Boston, a dream he'd kept hidden even from himself. The distance scared me, but so did the idea of holding him back. "We'll make it work," he said, his voice fierce with conviction. But doubt lingered, a shadow we couldn't ignore. One night, in Central Park, we sat on a bench by the pond. The city's hum a soft backdrop. Ethan took my hand, his thumb tracing circles on my skin. "I used to think strength was about control," he said. "But it's about this, choosing you." Every day, his words broke something in me, and I kissed him, the world fading until it was just us, whole and unbroken. But life wasn't a painting. Ethan's mother's condition worsened, and his father's silence grew colder. I saw him struggle, torn between his past and our future. I wanted to fix it, to carry his pain, but all I could do was love him. And maybe, just maybe, that would be enough. Graduation came like a tidal wave, sweeping us into a future we weren't ready for. Ethan and I stood together in our caps and gowns, the NYU courtyard buzzing with families and flashbulbs. His mother was there, frail but smiling, her presence a quiet victory. His father was absent, a wound Ethan didn't mention but carried in his tight jaw. I squeezed his hand, grounding him, grounding us. The Chicago offer was a dream, but leaving Ethan felt like tearing out a piece of myself. His Boston program was his chance to build a life he'd chosen, not one forced on him. We spent nights debating long distance, moving together, or letting go. Each option hurt, but the thought of losing him hurt more. "We're stronger than distance," he said, his voice steady. I nodded, wanting to believe it. The summer was bittersweet. We sublet a tiny Brooklyn apartment, living on cheap takeout and each other's laughter. Ethan's sketches filled our walls, and my paintings spilled onto every surface. But his mother's health was declining, and each hospital visit drained him. I went with him when I could, holding his hand through sterile hallways, watching him be the son she needed. One night, after a long day at the hospital, Ethan broke. "I don't know how to do this," he said, his voice cracking. "I'm losing her, and I'm terrified of losing you." I pulled him close, my own fears spilling out. "You won't," I promised, though I wasn't sure I could keep it. We made love that night, desperate and tender, as if we could hold time still. In August, his mother passed. The funeral was a blur of grief and tension, his father's cold stare, Ethan's quiet strength. I stood by him, feeling helpless but refusing to leave. Afterward, he told me he needed to stay in Connecticut for a while, to settle her affairs. "Come with me," he said, but I couldn't. Chicago was calling, and I had to go. We parted with a kiss and a promise to make it work, but the distance already felt like a chasm. Long distance was brutal. Video calls couldn't capture the warmth of his touch, and texts couldn't carry his laugh. My Chicago exhibit was a success, but every applause felt hollow without him. Ethan threw himself into his design program, his messages growing shorter, his voice heavier. I painted through the loneliness, each canvas a letter to him, but doubt crept in. Had we been naive to think love could bridge 800 miles? Then, one crisp October morning, I opened my apartment door to find Ethan standing there, his duffel bag at his feet, his hazel eyes bright with determination. "I transferred," he said, stepping closer. "Boston wasn't home." "You are." My heart stopped, then surged. I kissed him, right there in the hallway, not caring who saw. We moved in together, a small apartment above a noisy Chicago street. It wasn't perfect, money was tight, and old wounds sometimes surfaced. But we built something real. Ethan's designs started gaining attention, and my art found a wider audience. We fought. We laughed. We grew. One evening, in Central Park during a visit to New York, Ethan pulled me to that same bench by the pond. The sunset painted the sky in hues of our first kiss. He took my hand, his voice steady. "You made me whole, Robert. The man who hurt you is gone, because you showed me who I could be." He slipped a ring onto my finger, simple and silver, his eyes asking a question. I said yes before he could finish, and we kissed, the world fading into our promise. Ethan Caldwell, the man who once made me bleed, became the love of my life. Our scars told a story, not of pain, but of redemption, of two broken boys who found each other and built something unbreakable.